Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance. All backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.
Listeners of the Randomness of Nothing podcast, as always, we bring interesting guests from different perspectives of life, and this man is the epitome of it by being an entrepreneur, and since 2008 has lived in Japan. He's the co-founder of Ambiki, and you want to get a listen to this because if you have children, he's developed a software platform that takes a holistic approach to children when it comes to their well-being, speech therapy, and all of the things that encompass their wellness. Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks for having me, Rashad. Excited to be here.
You know, what was fascinating, and thank you, was that, this software platform you developed, and you're a graduate of Wake Forest University. So please, can you give us a little bit of your background, sir?
Yeah. So going back to school, I think a lot of my journey started my sophomore year when I made the decision to study abroad in Japan. It was kind of out of the blue because I had been studying Spanish up until that point, and I had absolutely no interest in Japan, hadn't really thought about it.
Yeah.
But I wasn't that great at Spanish, and I knew that I couldn't do study abroad in Spain because all the classes would be in Spanish. But then one day, this lady gave a presentation about study abroad in Japan, and they had business classes in English, and you didn't have to have any prior Japanese experience. So my roommate and I both thought hey, let's give it a try.
Yeah. That's a pretty ambitious thing, considering that Spanish is is one of the quote unquote easier languages to pick up for people who speak English. And, that's pretty amazing that sparked in you.
Yeah. So my roommate and I gave it a shot, was supposed to stay for one semester, ended up staying for the whole year and really liked it. So came back after graduation. I worked in investment banking in Charlotte, North Carolina for a couple of years.
Yeah.
This was back in 2006, 2007. So right before the financial crisis.
Right.
The cracks were starting to show, and it was an interesting job in that I was learning a lot. I was very intellectually challenged to learn new things.
Right.
Made good money, but at the end of the day, I wasn't finding my purpose, my why. I didn't see myself doing that long term. So 2008 kind of did a complete 180, went to teach English in Japan, and it was at that first job teaching adults in Tokyo that I got my first taste of programming, where I started teaching myself to program because at the school I was at, they had this old program called Lotus Notes. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes, I do remember Lotus Notes. Absolutely. Oh my God. For the younger audiences, there was a life before. There were software platforms before what's readily accessible on your TV and your tablets.
Yeah. It was not easy to use, and it was all in Japanese. And so there were these students who had been at this school for 10 plus years, but every year a new foreign English teacher would come in, and it was like they were starting from scratch. They had to, talk about their goals again. They had to say, why they're studying English. There wasn't any database that we could reference to understand their background and, why they were there. So I started teaching myself programming to try and make a desktop application that would work in Japanese and English, and that we could track student progress.
That's really cool.
And that was the first kind of taste of programming, and things progressed from there. I started getting into web building web applications with the Ruby on Rails framework. And I made an app for my friend who was a translator in Tokyo, and went to go advertise that on a site, and got introduced to the owner of that site, and he ended up hiring me, and that was my first like real development job that helped me transition from being a teacher to like getting into software development. And so learned a ton at that company that was pros.com, and spent about 5 years there.
Yeah.
And then in 2018, one of my good buddies back from the investment banking days called me up and said, hey, we just purchased this pediatric speech therapy company in Tennessee. There's about 60 therapists that work there, but they're burnt out. They're taking work home every night.
Yeah.
End of the month, they have a ton of reports that they have to submit. There's just all this work they have to do outside of the therapy and the treatment of the kids. He's like, can you come help? Like, Kevin, I know you're pretty good with software. Like, could you come help and try to make things a little bit more efficient on the operations side?
Yeah.
And for me, that sounded really interesting because I thought it was a good mix of like, I had done some English as a second language teaching in Japan for 2 and 3 year olds. At the translation company, I had also like gotten some experience with natural language processing and that sort of thing. So it felt like it was all of my prior background just kind of perfectly coming together. So I jumped at that opportunity. Yeah. And we started building some tools for them. And 3 years later, we looked up and we had pretty much built the operating system that was running their whole practice. And we had helped them grow from 60 therapists up to about 170 therapists.
That is absolutely amazing.
It was at that point that we decided, like, all right, like we have something pretty good here. Why don't we, instead of just having this work for one practice, why don't we spin this out into its own company, a startup, and try to sell this software more broadly to other private practices across the US?
Make it as a software as a service rather than exclusively to one practice, because it worked with that group of people and it's easily replicated amongst multiple different practices.
Yeah, so that was the start of Ambiki about 4 or 5 years ago. And so we make software for private practice, speech, language, pediatric therapy practices to help them do their scheduling, their clinical documentation. So after they see the kids, they have to write notes about what happened. Insurance billing. That insurance billing in the US is very complex. So, submitting the insurance claims, how they get paid back, those sorts of things.
Right. The billing codes and things of that nature. Have you guys, just briefly, based on even with their software platform and the complexity of insurance billing, does it allow for Medicaid and other children's programs to be able to pay for your software? Are you guys integrated with that?
Yeah. So we help. So we don't actually ourselves get paid by Medicaid, but the practices that are using our software, we help them do the billing for Medicaid and things like that so that they can get paid. Yep.
Absolutely. And I can only imagine that has to take a huge burden off of their shoulders because, unfortunately, doctors spend a lot of time and their assistants spend an extraordinary amount of time in the billing practices services, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah. Billing is the most complex. It's the headache. And, like a lot of these are small businesses for the most part. And, mostly the owners tend to be SLPs who started their own practice. Right. So they went to school to be a speech language pathologist. They didn't go to school to be a business owner or like to be an insurance billing expert.
Yes.
Like, so they care about the kids. They care about how to help the kids. So the more that we can take off their plate on the admin side, on the billing side, it gives them more time to focus on like where they can really have an impact.
What do you say to somebody who's trying to take, I'm going to pivot a bit because we'll get roped and we'll go back to Ambiki because, how you basically went from investment banking, then went to Japan on, kind of on, a whim because it matched your personality and needs. What do you say to that person at any stage in life that's at that crossroads of how they make the decision of how to pivot their life or their career? Do they hold back? What made you take that leap of faith?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say like it was never easy. It was never a clear-cut choice. And there were definitely times that I failed, but even the times that I failed, I feel like I learned something. So as an example of like where it didn't work out, that first teaching job in Tokyo, when I made that student database, I went and I presented it to the president of the company. So my thought was like, I knew I didn't want to be an English teacher for the rest of my career. So I thought maybe I can pivot into technology, helping this company. Like I was able to make this program. I feel like I had a knack for it. And I pretty much got told like, foreign English teachers, they can either be a teacher or they can train other teachers. Like that's it.
Yeah.
So it was at that point that I realized, all right, like I don't have a future at this company. But like I didn't regret doing all that hard work because I had taught myself a lot. I had learned a lot in the process. So yeah, I mean, I think my advice would be like a lot of the underlying thing is like you got to put in the work, but also it's like how can you increase your luck surface area, right? I've been very lucky and fortunate in my career, but also looking back at like those times that like luck happened, if I hadn't done some of the things prior, I wouldn't have set myself up for that opportunity for that lucky moment to occur.
Right.
If that makes sense.
It does. And, I mean, most people, and I say this respectfully, probably wouldn't move half across the earth to a language they don't speak. But the core of it all is that you decided to pursue your own curiosity. It piqued your interest and you pursued it with the highest level of passion possible. And you weren't scared to fail or let things trip you up along the way. And I think that's a beautiful story. And that's why this show was created.
But yeah, there were definitely times where I was thinking back like, man, did I make a mistake here? Like, because I mean, I had a nice, safe, secure job at the investment bank. And even looking back now, like, there were probably 30 people I remember in our training class. And I think still about half of them are at the bank today. Like they still have jobs 20 years later at that same bank. So, fast forward like 2013, I'm about to get married. Like at that time I had quit my teaching job to try a startup, to try to go out on my own. I told my fiance wife to be like, give me until the end of the year. And if I'm not seeing any traction, like I'll go get another teaching job.
Yeah.
End of the year came. I wasn't seeing any traction. So I'm like, I got to go get another teaching job. I'm getting married in 3 months. Like I basically don't have a real job. Like, what did I do? Did I mess everything up? But, it all worked out in the end. But I think the key theme was like keeping like self-improvement, trying to always learn new things, trying to keep bettering myself.
That's absolutely wonderful. And I loved your background. And now we'll pivot back to Ambiki. Because I was like, man, what does this name mean, right? And it means ambitious, obviously in the English language, and it means kyoku, which means read or memory in Japanese. So, like, did you come up with the name when your partner, like, because, your friend, your colleague took over, they said they took over that practice. Did that name come organically? Was that you?
We had a small team of about 5 back when we started, and there was another teammate, Nate, who came up with that name. We were basically trying to find, like, we wanted a .com name. We wanted something that was, like, short and one word and kind of memorable. And, 5 years ago, like, there weren't many .com names left, and we didn't have money to, like, go buy a, like, really, expensive one.
Right.
So when this name got proposed, we really liked the ambitious part of it. Like that is still our number one value at Ambiki is be ambitious. And the .com name was available. So like, let's go with it. It's unique. We can make it our own.
What's it like being in a different country, a different time zone, operating a software platform that's primarily US based?
Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.
I'm assuming all US based right now.
Yeah, so all of our customers are US based. Our team is global. The majority, we have about 20 employees. I would say about 15 or so are based in the US, and maybe 5 of us are outside the US. But everyone's 100% remote. So a couple tools that I've developed to help manage that is, one, we have this team working agreement. So one of the first things we ran into is I had this fear that my working day, if I'm working 9 to 5 in Japan, that's middle of the night in the US. And if I send a message, so we use like Microsoft Teams. If I send a message in Microsoft Teams to somebody, I don't want them feeling pressure at 10 p.m. or 1 a.m. that like, I got to reply to my boss right away.
Of course they would. That's the natural instinct.
Right. And even if I say like, you don't have to do it, they're still going to feel that. So like we had to have this explicit team working agreement that everybody signed that said, you know, we're all on different time zones. Like you can send a message anytime, but if it's outside your working hours, like you don't have to reply, you don't have to respond, you don't have to check. This is async communication. We just had to make that very explicit. And I think once we made that very explicit, that helped a lot of things, and it really helped us. Yeah, personally for me, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, that's awesome. That's really good.
Personally for me, like I'm an early bird. So I tend to my day starts like 4 a.m. I try to catch the East Coast team. I typically have meetings from like 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. my time. It's like the afternoon on the East Coast. So catching people for different meetings. And then I, walk the kids to the bus stop and come back. And then the rest of my day, I can do a lot of deep focus work because, the US side is kind of quieting down and they're signing off. So that has been helpful to like split my day of like mornings tends to be really heavy on the meeting side, but afternoons I can do a lot of deep focus work.
What's it like living in Japan, the cultural differences for, you're an expat, right? So I think that's the proper terminology. I haven't interviewed a lot of people that have taken, the leap and been able to live the life that you've had remotely like this. What is the life like in a foreign country?
I love living in Japan. I mean, great food, like great people. The people are very kind and respectful. We have a great neighborhood here. That's one of the things that I've really enjoyed. So we have neighborhood events with the kids. Like it's not many cars. So the kids are always like out playing, riding bikes, finding neighbors. Public transportation is awesome in Japan, so I can get down to Tokyo on a train in 90 minutes.
That's amazing.
Cool.
Yeah, a good friend of mine's uncle. I basically call him my uncle. His wife is Japanese, and I remember when because he was in the Navy, and it was amazing what he said. Very similar, stories to how Japan was like, and so it's amazing that. When you came over there, how prevalent, and I'm just going to pivot a bit, was it to learn English, for people who are over there because they're, teaching it as a second language? Excuse me. And was that more prevalent that people had to learn English to be incorporated with like U.S. businesses and colleges and universities? And is there a difference where that's more mandatory in other places?
Yeah. I think what I found when I was teaching at the conversation school is that in Japan, you know, the kids, they learn English, but they tend to be very good at reading and writing, but they don't get the same sort of speaking opportunities. So they tend to be very shy and afraid to talk. And so I think compared probably to other countries, their reading and writing is good, but their conversation levels might be behind.
Right.
So that was like for this adult conversation school, a lot of the adults that were there were in the business world and they wanted to get better at the conversation side of it. So especially for a lot of those classes, we'd just have kind of newspaper article type discussion classes where we'd bring in an English newspaper article and just like get them. And part of it also felt like kind of teaching a business class a little bit. Like it wasn't just like teaching English. It was kind of like getting them to think in a different way. Like how can they express their ideas, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. Now, when it comes to Ambiki, what is the onboarding process like? When you obviously had that one particular practice and then you're going to another practice, is it more past like word of mouth, or is it more like, okay, this is going to onboard you, you're a team of 5 to 7 people, your workload is this? Can you kind of explain how that onboarding process works?
Yeah. So a lot of our business has come from strong word of mouth. We have a range we have solo entrepreneurs, solo practices that choose Ambiki, all the way up to practices that have 50 to 60 to 100 therapists.
That's amazing.
So the solo practices, they tend to do more of a self-onboarding type thing. But the larger the practice, we definitely have our own implementation team that helps them. And it typically is about maybe a couple weeks to a month where we bring them through a process of training them on the software, helping get their data migrated onto Ambiki, helping them get set up. Because really, like, it ends up being kind of the operating system. All of your operations end up flowing around this software. So it's really important to set them off on the right foot and get them set up well.
Yeah, I saw it. It's like it schedules, it's the billing. Do you eventually expand? Is it going to expand in the payroll, or is that something that you're going to kind of stay off of? Because if it is their entire system, it may help them. Maybe it doesn't give them, 2 or 3 different platforms to work with.
So we do have a payroll feature. It's not a complete payroll system, but what it does is, so a lot of speech therapists, speech therapy private practices, they like to pay their therapist by the session. So how many sessions you get paid a certain amount for each session. So we help like add that up every month, that then you can kind of import that into your payroll system very easily, if that makes sense. But we don't actually handle the bank transfers to the payments and that sort of thing.
Understood. What are expansion plans? Because every software evolves, right? Every software eventually takes the next leap of faith. When you talk about Lotus Notes, it's funny. Most people don't know about like Linux and things like that, and how to have the kernel, and then Unix and everything. Every software evolves, and I'm sure you all will. What would you like to see the software eventually evolve into?
So a couple things that we're right now planning on for the second half of this year is how can we make it more of a turnkey solution when it comes to the insurance billing and when it comes to the data migration? Because again, like those are the complex pieces of it. And for me, the analogy I would use is like, I don't like doing my taxes. Like, even if I had the best tax software in the world, it's still like a pain to fill it out, and I just don't like it. So I get a negative association in my mind every year. Like, I have to do my taxes again. Like, even if the software is perfect, like I just don't like going through the motion.
The mentality of doing it. Yes, absolutely.
So I feel like even though right now Ambiki has great software on the billing and we have a double entry ledger system that is patent pending specific for healthcare, it's still like we want to take that next step to like, if they want it, can we have an internal team that can help manage the billing even more for them and make it even more of a managed turnkey solution? So that is kind of where we're looking for the next step in our growth.
Well, I think it was also, kind of that ambitious portion of your life where your friend in 2018, had the decision of, purchasing this company pre-COVID, right? So like everything in life is timing, right? So suddenly, whereas, remote, medical work and therapy and things of that nature were kind of still, on the fence. Once that incident occurred, it became the norm. It became a necessity for businesses and therapists and in-home and web, things to do, an interface system. And here you all were, because of your previous work, ahead of the curve, so to speak, when this situation arose and the opportunity came from it.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you, Rashad, like it was a complete turning point. We did a survey in January of 2020 of those 68 therapists at the practice. We said, like, how many of you have done teletherapy in the past and how many of you have an interest in it? And only one of those 60 therapists had ever done teletherapy. And all the others are like, it's not going to work. It's like, it needs to be in person.
Yes.
But then COVID happened and there was no choice. They had to do it. They had to do it by video. And we figured it out. And yeah, I felt like we were a little bit ahead of the curve, that we had this teletherapy platform ready to go that they could use.
And now it's like, okay, I can drop my kid off at school. I can be in my more personal self. I'm not rushed from traffic. I'm not pressed for I'm not saying it's not a stressful situation, but you may get that kid more cooperative or that parent more willing to being able to host a session or attend something because circumstances are now a little bit more available than they were in the past. And it's funny how that mindset shifted from a very cataclysmic event.
Yeah, definitely.
It's amazing. And so I think, listen, I'm so glad, we bounced emails back and forth, and this session took quite a bit of time. And for that, I sincerely apologize. But this is one of the more fascinating and ambitious interviews that I've had a chance to take a part of. Where can people find Ambiki, yourself, and all the wonderful things that you're doing in your line of business and work?
Yeah, Ambiki.com for those interested in that. And I think the best thing, if you do have an interest there, set up a demo with our sales team and they'd love to walk you through it. For me personally, you can find me on LinkedIn, connect, say hi. Love to meet new people. And yeah.
And throughout all this time, I never actually asked the specifics of all the things in pediatric care that Ambiki actually does. Can you give us a rundown?
Yeah, so everything we do, scheduling, clinical documentation, but we also have, for therapists, we have the materials that they might actually want to use in the session. So a lot of this is like from birth to elementary school. These are kids. So a lot of these sessions, you're trying to find things that the kid is interested in. So if they like monster trucks, if they like cookies, like can you create some materials that combine their interests plus like the goals that you're working on with that particular patient. So Ambiki helps kind of generate those materials for you that you can use in the session. We also have the teletherapy platform where you can actually conduct like a Zoom, but it has extra tools that are very specific for speech therapists. And then, the whole billing side, being able to run the finances of your practice, the dashboards you need to manage the daily operations.
That's absolutely amazing. And, I think that in the past where people may have been hesitant to maybe put, their children in things because, everybody wants to think that, I don't even say there's anything wrong, but it may be difficult to find resources available and the doctors may be burned out and not have the time. I'm glad your software is in that space to be able to help children in that regard and parents alleviate some of that stress that they may have.
Yeah. I mean, it's fun. Like, I feel like I could spend another 10 years and still have things to build. Like, it's one of those projects that is just like vast.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're, interviewing you is one of the reasons I get to do this show, and the people that I get to reach and make somewhat of a touch and impact with whoever's listening. So I hope who's ever listening who needs Ambiki gets a chance to listen to this episode. And Kevin Diaz, I really want to thank you for your time, particularly halfway across the world when I know you could be doing something else.
It was great. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
You too. Thank you, sir.
Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.